Right. Well, welcome everybody. Today is January 14th, 2024. I'm with Michael Vance, Libertarian Party of Colorado Legislative Director, and my name is Brandon Work from Free State, Colorado. We are going to be every week meeting at Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. to go over the legislative session, talk about some of the bills that are going on this week, hopefully provide an opportunity for individuals to get down to the state capitol, testify for or against some important bills, and put some pressure on these legislators who are supposed to be representing the people here in Colorado. So, Michael, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Hey, very well, thank you. So, as everybody here probably knows, last week was the beginning of the legislative session. Last Wednesday was when it started, January 10th, and the Colorado legislature will continue until May 8th. So we get quite a few more weeks. They're still in the process of just getting everything started, everything ramping up, getting all the new members kind of onboarded. Everybody's assigned to committees now. Not a lot of bills are being heard at this time. We will see that pick up in the next few weeks, but we do have some bills to talk about tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started here on the slideshow. So this is the format we're going to be looking at going forward. The Michael and I will be working on every week. We're going to be looking at just a schedule for the week. So, maybe you have a day off during the week when you can go down and testify on a committee hearing for a bill you care about. Of course, you can do it remotely. It's more valuable to do it in person. But even if you can't testify or not willing to go down there and speak personally, you can still make some noise on social media, talk about some of these important bills, and hopefully hold these legislators' feet to the fire, as well as elevating our liberty leaders. So this week, our legislative committee schedule, Monday, there's nothing, not in session. The legislature is not in session for Martin Luther King Day. So one less day for them to trample on our rights. Not a bad thing. Tuesday, there are some committee hearings, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So as you may know, Monday through Friday, that's when the business is done. The committees are heard. Committees have a schedule throughout the week. Some committees meet maybe once, some meet twice a week. And of course, the House and Senate meet as a chamber of the whole, or the cow, as they call it down there, Monday through Friday as well. So that's when bills get introduced to committee, they pass or fail in committee. If they pass, they move on to potentially another committee, then the committee as a whole, the cow, and then move on to the next chamber. So there's plenty of opportunity for citizens to provide input. Let's go ahead and look at what we got going on this week. Skipping over Monday, since obviously there's nothing going on. Looking at Tuesday, so we're going to see this a lot this week. There's a joint Senate, Local Government, Housing, and House Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee. So that's the Senate and the House getting together to hear some presentations from some different people within the state government to help kind of plan their uh, their legislation for the year. So there'll be presentations from the state auditor, the Joint Budget Committee, Department of Local Affairs. They're going to talk about Proposition 123 and the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. Now, of course, you can look in depth at the Colorado Legislative website. This is your best resource here, leg.colorado.gov. And you can actually click there and look at the schedule uh, for the whole week. That's where you can find this. You can click today's schedule and go through every day. So if you're interested in going to any of these committee hearings, they list the location, the agenda, and the time that they meet. So on Tuesday, they'll be having this, so you can tune in remotely, listen to some of this information if it's something you're interested in. But no opportunity really for people to speak because there's no bills being heard. So nothing done yet. They're still in this early stages here during the beginning of the session. Now, on the committee of the whole, the House is going to be hearing a pretty significant bill, House Bill 24-1084. This is the repeal and reenact earned income tax credit increase. So, as you may know, during the special session this last November, a bill was passed that is subject to a lawsuit right now by Representative Scott Bottoms, who's suing Speaker of the House and the governor for passing this bill unconstitutionally, denying him his right to hear the bill read at length during the testimony on the House floor. So they're getting around the lawsuit. They're squashing this by basically repealing it and reenacting it, doing it properly, and making sure that it gets through to avoid this lawsuit and kind of reworking the bill that Scott Bottoms caught them screwing up on. So, of course, this bill does have some controversy associated with it. This bill does take away some of our taxpayer Bill of Rights refund money. They're going to use TABOR refunds to create this or to expand this earned income tax credit, which means that people who maybe didn't earn very much money are now going to get more of your tax refund money paid to them, including people who do not have Social Security numbers. So there's some of the controversy around this bill. One of the reasons why it was such a bad bill, why Representative Bottoms sued them, not just because they denied him his rights, but because it was a bad bill worth trying to stop. Of course, this is expected to pass. But on Tuesday on social media, it's a good idea to raise some noise, talk about this, talk about these legislators stealing our Tabor refund money to give out as income tax credits to people who didn't earn the money and potentially are here unlawfully in our country. Of note is Mary Young, who's a state representative in House District 50, probably the most competitive House race this year. So I guess I'm not too surprised to see her on this bill, but it's something that could definitely come back and bite her this election. Michael, do you have anything to add on this?
I would just say we need to make sure that we get in front of this thing because not only did they screw up, but it's a bad bill itself. We need to make sure we're trying to do everything we can to protect our Tabor rights.
Definitely, yeah. And that's the message on social that could be on social media or reaching out to your legislators. Tell them to oppose House Bill 1084 because it takes away uses some of our tax refund money in this wealth redistribution scheme. But we'll go ahead and move on. Of course, that is expected to pass on the House floor on Tuesday. Looking at Wednesday this week down at the state capitol, there's a couple committee hearings, both joint meetings. So kind of like what we saw on Tuesday, the Senate and the House are meeting together. Both education committees meeting at once to hear some presentations from the Joint Budget Committee, History Colorado, the state auditor, the Departments of Education, Early Childhood, and Higher Education. So not really an opportunity for citizen testimony or activism, but if you're very interested in education legislation, you could always tune in, listen to this committee hearing information, potentially even show up and see what they have to say, see what the state government's trying to sell the legislators when it comes to our government education system. Also, the other committee hearing that day is a joint committee hearing with the Senate and the House, both of their committees, the Transportation and Energy on the Senate side and Energy and the Environment on the House side as well. So they're going to be all meeting to discuss things there. Carolyn asks in the chat, do they take public testimony at SMART Act hearings? I don't know. I don't believe so, but I could be wrong. I'm not honestly too familiar with it. But it could be worth showing up and just at least seeing what's going on. I'm not sure if they take public testimony since it's not really a committee hearing in which legislation is being presented. It's as far as I know, I don't think there is an opportunity for. Oh, you weren't asking, you were telling us. Perfect. They do take public testimony. Okay, thank you very much, Carolyn. So Carolyn says they do take public testimony at SMART Act hearings. Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Carolyn. I appreciate it. So you do have opportunity to speak on any of these issues that are important to you. So uh, the Senate and House Transportation and Energy meetings, committee hearings, they'll hear from the Department of Public Health, Environment, Energy Office, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Public Utilities Commission. So you can definitely show up if you're interested there. On Thursday, January 18th this week, we're having another joint House and Senate Health and Human Services meeting. We'll hear presentations from the state auditor, Child Protection, Connect for Health Colorado, Departments of Local Affairs, Regulatory Affairs, Division of Insurance, and Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. So those presentations will be heard on Thursday. And then there is a committee hearing also from the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. They will be discussing two bills. One bill I do think is pretty interesting, and I'd love to get any feedback if people are aware of it. It's this authorizing direct to consumer sales of raw milk. So this is going to be heard Thursday. Raw milk is definitely an issue. I know that the Libertarian Party, Free State Colorado, freedom-minded individuals definitely support expanding raw milk. This bill, however, I've heard mixed reviews. Might not be the best, but maybe it's okay. So I'd love to hear what people have to think about it. This bill authorizes direct-to-consumer sales of raw milk, something the governor supports as well. Some of the problems I would have with this bill, though, is that a raw milk producer would need to register with the Department of Public Health and the Environment, and of course, comply with labeling, storage, handling, and transportation requirements. Uh, the sale may take place at a location where the raw milk is produced, at the consumer's residence, or at a farmer's market or roadside market. But now the Department of Agriculture, if this bill passed, would of course create rules around raw milk, be able to inspect producers' raw milk and operations, and enforce against a violation in court by an imposition, excuse me, or by imposition of a civil penalty. So this creates more regulation, more government oversight of the raw milk people out there, of the raw milk producers. So that part I would have a problem with. However, authorizing it and creating this new market for raw milk sales and giving producers the ability to engage in raw milk sales may be a good thing. So I don't know. I'd love to hear what people have to say about that. Do you have any thoughts on there, Michael?
I'm a little conflicted. I mean, I know we signed the pledge, and one of the things that we put in the pledge was we wanted to see, particularly Republican Congress people uh, within the state, support raw milk. And I mean, this is us seeing a support of raw milk, but there's a lot of bad legislation in here. I mean, it's not that good of a bill. We don't want to see any. At the same time, while we do want to see more personal freedom, more health freedom, more agricultural freedom, however you want to say it, we don't want to see new. We don't want to see a bunch of new regulations just for something like this either. So, um, uh, it's something I haven't fully fleshed through, but I am curious about this bill, and it's something I want to read more about.
Well, definitely. This will be heard on Thursday, January 18th at 1:30 p.m. in the Senate Committee Room 352. So anybody who wants to go down there, talk about this legislation, of course, on the state legislative website, you can search for Senate Bill 24-043 or just type in raw milk, and this would come up for more information. Jessica in the chat says they should just say it's okay without having to inspect and make rules. They always make things harder. Another level of bureaucracy. That is definitely true. So I'd heard mixed things that this was a good bill, that it was a bad bill from different people across the state. So I'm going to keep watching it and let's see what happens here. All right, moving on to Friday. So Friday, January 19th, there's the joint House and Senate Health and Human Services Committee hearing. So they'll have presentations from the state auditor, Office of the Child Protection, Connect for Health, Departments of Local Affairs, Regulatory Agencies, Division of Insurance, and CDPHE. So there you go. So that's really what we got on the calendar for this week. Not a lot of bills being heard in the committee hearings, mostly presentations, mostly these legislators getting a full recap of what's going on from other government agencies. So kind of a light week for committee hearings, but we'll keep you updated as the session goes forward. Some of the bills that we've been talking about or looking at, they don't have committee hearing dates assigned yet, but they will be heard. So these are some of the bills that are on our radar. And at the end, if you have any other bills that you find interesting, or please put it in the chat. If there's any bills that you're tracking, I'd love to track more bills or talk here at the end. We'll open it up for comment here. So this bill, Senate Bill 24, 2022, would regulate flavored tobacco products. Absolutely ridiculous, trying to restrict the ability of adults to enjoy whatever nicotine or tobacco product they want. So this would expand the ability of a board of county commissioners to regulate tobacco products. So it would allow county commissioners to regulate the distribution of cigarettes, tobacco products, or nicotine products, and prohibit the distribution or sale of cigarettes, tobacco products, or nicotine products, including flavored cigarettes, flavored tobacco products, or flavored nicotine products. So, of course, always interesting in Colorado, as we were one of the leading states in legal cannabis, to see tobacco uh, constantly under attack as it's been for years. And just another example of these goody two shoes legislators going out and trying to save the children. What do you think, Michael?
I think it's an absolutely ridiculous bill. Um, this is just something we should. I mean, as soon as it hits committee, I mean, this is something we should probably try to strike down.
Definitely. I know there's a lot of great tobacco lobbyists in our state. The smoker friendly people are awesome. And I know they're going to be fighting against this. So it will be heard in the local government housing committee in the Senate to start. No date has been assigned yet, possibly as soon as next week. See some other legislation where we'll be tracking. This one has raised a lot of concern online, definitely created a massive Twitter storm this last week. House Bill 24-10039, non-legal name changes, concerning non-legal name changes for students in schools. So this was a bill put forward by the Colorado Youth Advisory Council Review Committee, which section 1 of the bill, I'll just go ahead and read it here, requires public schools and institute charter schools to use a student's preferred name if a preferred name is requested by the student and deems a school's refusal to use a student's preferred name is a form of discrimination. Section 2 of the bill creates the non-legal name changes in schools task force in the Department of Education, 9 members appointed by the department to examine existing school policies. Also requires the department to appoint members of the task force by June 30th, 2024. So creating this task force to, track what's going on and create for to further flesh out this policy change. So there you go. This bill I know was very concerning to a lot of parents out there who have kids in government schools who are now going to be subject to more of this kind of agenda. What do you think, Michael?
I think this is one of those ridiculous bills that just it's so bad it makes you laugh because of how how it's going to be abused. Um, I mean, how many of us were in high school, and if we had the opportunity to exploit some ridiculous name change, would have done it. I probably would have done it. I mean, I'm kind of curious how profane some of these uh names are going to be. I mean, there's nothing in here that establishes any sort of reasonable standard for the name change, so you could make it whatever you want. You can get super profane with it. I mean, just imagine having to have your teacher be in class with a teacher that's forced to call one of your classmates Lord Pussy Slayer. I mean, absolutely absurd. So um, I'm curious if this is one of those bills that's going to be so insane that it's going to get we're going to be able to kill it right away, or because of how woke people are and how crazy people are with the woke agenda, if they're going to be able to push this through. It's something we need to oppose, absolutely. But I'm extremely curious how far is too far, and I think they're trying to push the limits of how far is too far. They're trying to see how far too far is with this bill.
It is interesting. It'll be in the House Education Committee for those interested going forward. No committee date assigned yet. Let's go ahead and look at some other legislation that we're tracking. This comes back almost every year, it seems, this overdose prevention centers. So allowing a municipality to allow the operation of an overdose prevention center, otherwise known as a supervised injection site. This bill was actually killed in an interim committee to to the cheers of many people. However, Elizabeth Epps, the rabble rouser down there, and Kevin Priola, who's serving his last term in the legislature, are pushing this bill forward. So basically allowing a city, town, city and county to authorize an overdose prevention center within the boundaries to save the lives of persons at risk of preventable overdoses. So interesting bill. I can understand, maybe a libertarian uh, argument for allowing local governments to let people safely shoot up, but I also can see that this is a massive problem for many communities, and most people, I think, would be very resistant to this type of legislation. What do you think, Michael?
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot more to add to this one, but it's a little bit absurd. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because I mean, it seems like this bill consistently fails every single years. But um, uh, and I do, like you're saying. I mean, I do see the libertarian uh position for supporting something like this, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think we should be using taxpayer resources for something like this. Um, I don't want to pay for this. I mean, I don't think anybody else in this meeting wants to pay for something like this either. So, um,
Jessica in the chat says that Vanessa Rutledge, who was on the call last week, has a ton of knowledge on this too. Literally everywhere they do put these, things get worse. Hard data. I could see that. I mean, we're seeing what's happening down in downtown Denver with all the policies that Denver's pushing down there. It seems to be getting worse. So now attracting this element or saying it's okay to shoot up these drugs could definitely be a very bad thing. Holly in the chat says, "Yep, I don't want to pay for this."
yeah. The war on drugs is an abject failure, but I mean, I don't think we should go the opposite route and really try to. Um, I don't think we need to subsidize drug use either.
There you go. All right. Another bill that we're looking at, a really good one, presented by some of our one of our best liberty leaders down there, Representative Scott Bottoms, who's consistently has a very high scorecard rating for constitutional principles. House Bill 24-1065, reduction of state income tax rate. Now, this has been assigned to the Finance Committee, surprisingly. I would expect them to assign this to the Kill Committee, the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, but this is actually going to be heard in Finance. So I be interesting to see if it's amended or how the Democratic majority handles it. So I'll read the bill summary here. For income tax years commencing on and after January 1st, 2025, the bill reduces both the individual and the corporate state income tax rates from 4.4 to 4%, just a flat 4%. The bill also exempts the rate reductions from the existing statutory requirements that tax expenditure legislation include a tax preference performance statement and a statutory legislative declaration repeal after a specified period of years. So what's interesting about this bill, Governor Jared Polis in his State of the State address last week said that he wants taxes reduced. I mean, he's been pretty adamant in his tenure that the income tax is needs to go down, that it is penalizing people for productive work. So one thing I can agree with him on. So it'll be interesting to see if the Democrats in a very important election year might support something like this and let their at-risk legislators get a good vote in on this. We'll see. Much remains on this, but what I'd really be excited about is seeing the Colorado Liberty community show up to testify in support of this bill if it when it comes to committee hearing in finance, possibly as soon as next week. Anything to add on this one, Michael?
I think this is a bill that we can actually get excited about. Um, Even though there's a bunch of Democrats in charge, in power, as is something that we can actually support for a change versus consistently being at the Capitol and saying no, no, no. This is something we can actually say yes to.
Cool. Perfect. Got another one here. One of other our Liberty leaders down there, Representative Ken DeGraff, definitely a very pro-constitutional limited government type of guy. He put forward a bill last year that ended up getting pulled. He wasn't happy with the language. It's a complicated issue in terms of what he was trying to achieve. So him and Senator Mark Basley this year have introduced House Bill 24-1023, civil forfeiture reform. If you know anything about civil asset forfeiture, it's a really bad practice that allows government agencies to steal people's money without them being convicted of a crime. So, just reading a little bit of the summary here, the bill makes the following changes to forfeiture actions. Forfeiture order must not be entered unless the civil complaint is filed within 90 days after the property is seized. The plaintiff establishes that the seized property is an instrumentality of or proceeds derived directly from the crime for which the owner is convicted. When feasible, the court hearing the criminal proceeding also hears the civil forfeiture action. All proceedings in the forfeiture action are stayed until criminal conviction is obtained. Any party to a forfeiture action may appeal an order concerning disposition of seized property, except the defendant in the criminal action, who may only appeal after the final judgment. A forfeiture order must not be entered until there is a criminal conviction unless a specified exemption is met. Any person with an interest in the seized property may request a prompt post-seizure hearing within 14 days after the seizure, and 25% of the proceeds of a forfeiture are deposited in a new forfeiture defense fund created in the bill rather than the Law Enforcement Community Services Grant Program Fund. So this sounds like it would go a long way towards prohibiting law enforcement agencies from just unduly, without due process, I mean, taking people's property and using it for their department's budgets or putting in some sort of discretionary fund. So, civil asset forfeiture reform is long needed in Colorado. It's been attempted many times. It'll be very interesting to see the law enforcement pushback on this bill because they want to be able to keep that money. But it has been assigned to the Judiciary Committee with no hearing date set, but another good one that would be wonderful to see people go down and testify in support of once it does get a committee hearing date. What do you think, Michael?
I'm excited about this thing. About this bill. One thing I'd like to see them add is some language stating that uh, that our property is, and maybe I don't know if they would go for this language, but maybe our property is extension of ourselves, and just like us. We citizens are portrayed as being innocent till proven guilty. That our possessions and our belongings, our assets, are also um, presumed innocent till proven guilty as well, because the reason a lot of law enforcement agencies are able to conduct civil asset forfeiture is because they specifically see our assets, our property, our possessions as actually being guilty until they're proven innocent, and that's how they're able to take all of our stuff. Uh, if you have $2,000 with you because you are going to purchase a new vehicle, that $2,000 is suspicious and therefore guilty. So they take it through via civil asset forfeiture, even though you're on your way to purchase a new vehicle and you just got pulled over by the police because you were speeding. Um, it's absolutely insane. So I'd like to see something inside this bill stating that they I'd like to see a slight amendment just recognizing our property as being innocent as well.
Yeah, this bill definitely seems like it goes a long way towards getting us to a better place in terms of civil asset forfeiture. I noticed on here, I'll have to read the actual bill text, but that a forfeiture action is stayed until a criminal conviction is obtained. So not allowing the law enforcement to actually seize that until there's actual criminal conviction, not just uh, potential thought that there's a crime committed. So very good one to keep an eye on for
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely.
Another great bill from one of our Liberty leaders, Stephanie Luck. I believe she's still very, very pregnant down at the state capitol. So good for her for still showing up, not going in remotely like Elizabeth Epps has been doing. But House Bill 24-1022 would publish bill drafts online before session. So, of course, there's a big issue around transparency about citizen access to the legislature. Part of the reason why we're doing these calls to help create some better transparency and give people an idea of what's going on down under the Gold Dome. But this bill would create a process and establish a public online forum for members of the General Assembly to publish drafts or titles of the bills that they are considering introducing during the next legislative session. So it sounds like a great idea. We definitely saw during the special session that the legislators themselves, and much less the public, were unable to have access to the bills that they'd be voting on within minutes, within hours, within minutes of being introduced. So having some information ahead of time, giving the public more transparency, more access to what's going on down there in the bills that are coming forward, could definitely be a good thing. I know this would be a great bill. Unfortunately, you can see that it's been assigned to the State, Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, which is the kill committee. Now, because this is a state issue, I could imagine that that could be just the committee it needs to be assigned to get passed. However, I imagine that this bill would probably get killed, but it'll be interesting to see. Would love people to see support Representative Luck in this effort down at the Capitol. What do you think, Michael?
I think you're right. I mean, this does seem like a fantastic bill. I mean, uh, I think if we had a bill like this, it could have prevented Prop HH and SB 303, because that was a absolutely insane bill. And I mean, you've seen Polis take a lot more heat lately, and I believe that 303 was the start of Polis taking a lot of heat over the last year. So we need to and I'm not saying we need to protect Polis by any stretch of the imagination, but um, it would prevent the disaster. It would help prevent some disasters that we have seen, like SB 303.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and move forward. So that's what we got for this week, kind of a shorter call. Of course, as we get more into the session, we're going to be seeing lots of mostly bad bills being presented every week, trying to rally people to show up at the Capitol, speak out against them, and create some noise on social media against these bad legislation. But I'd love to open it up to anybody here to say any bills that you're tracking, anything we should be keeping an eye on that we should try and generate some public interest in. Please message in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll let you speak if you raise your hand there. Obviously, the big gun bills are bills we're going to be watching going forward. Any attempts to force high density housing on small communities that don't want it. Lots of other legislation we'll be keeping an eye on as well. But any bills that are out there, please let us know. Of course, Free State Colorado on Twitter, Telegram, Facebook, Libertarian Party of Colorado on all those on Twitter and Facebook as well. So perfect. Anything else from anybody? We'll probably end it here shortly. And it's the same Zoom link we're going to use every week. These calls will be recorded and posted online, but I would love to have some participation, especially if you see something going on at the Capitol. Maybe you have some insider information. Please get it on here. We can definitely get that information out there and make some noise, hold these legislators accountable in this very important election year.
Hey,
What else you
Brandon,
got, Michael? Yeah, go for it.
I was wondering if you could, how much you saw of Polis' State of the State address, and if you had any comments on it, you could share.
I didn't watch it at all. I can't stand the guy, of course, as you as you sure. I read plenty of articles about it. You know, of course, one of his big issues is this transit. So specifically around rail, around trains across Colorado, up and down the I-25 corridor. I think that's interesting. I don't know if necessarily think a government-run railroad program is going to be very successful, of course. Um, so, that's a big thing. Of course, he's still pushing the high density housing and transit corridor route. So, of course, he'd have, railroad stations and then high density housing around it. So, that's his vision for the future of Colorado. Of course, they're going to be going after our ability to be entrepreneurs in our state. So, we'll see. Nick Lance just joined. He said he was late. Do we have a tracker web page? So there's a Google Sheet document that we're using to track this legislation and kind of go. That's a little more of the behind the scenes of how we're going to keep an eye on things going forward, just to make sure we don't miss anything. So yeah, Nick, I could definitely share that with you as well. So perfect. If there's nothing from anybody else, if anybody wants to talk, I can definitely unmute you here. Please let me know. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and I think we'll call it for the week. Perfect. Any final words there, Michael?
I think I'm good. I appreciate everybody hopping on here.
Perfect. I'll upload this here to YouTube shortly. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it, everybody. Take care. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday at 7:30, same Zoom login.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, they're all gone. Oh, Michael's gone.